The story starts with a woman named Gwen who picked up her children at the bus stop on October 10th, 2012. As she was driving back to her house, she spotted the Chadwick children waiting at the bus stop. It was pretty odd because their parents were never late picking them up. The two boys and Gwen's kids were in the same prep school in Ojai, California. Since she knew the family, she decided to stop and see what was going on. It was out of character for QC and Peter to forget to pick up their two children. The boys were 9 and 12 years old, and they had an older brother who was 15, but studied at another school. The boys' mom, Kui Chu, or QC as her friends called her, was a stay-at-home mom. She was very meticulous with their schedule. They were her entire focus, and their father Peter would usually pick them up at the bus stop every single day. So there was no reason as to why the boys would be there alone, waiting for the bus on their own. They all lived in a gated community that was part of a high-end neighborhood. Safety and security were a primary concern for the ones living in such a place. Gwen couldn't leave them there and decided to take them home by herself. One of the boys tried to call his parents but couldn't get an answer. Little did the little ones know what happened in their house would lead to an international manhunt. After they arrived, the woman who drove them home walked up to the Chadwick house and rang the doorbell. To her surprise, no one answered. Neither of the kids had keys to their house because they were never confronted with such a situation. Seeing that the house was empty, Gwen takes the boys back to her house, fixing everyone dinner. After they ate, the mom decided to try and contact some mutual friends to get a hold of the Chadwicks, but she didn't have any luck finding out where they were. So, the next step was to call the Newport Police Department. She requested them to do a wellness check on the family. The police arrived at around 7 p.m. They didn't get a response from either of their phones. Peter's phone went to voicemail, and his wife's phone kept ringing. They also tried to contact local hospitals to see if they'd maybe gone to the emergency room. There was no sign of them. So, by 7:45 p.m., they decided to get into the home. After they opened the door, all the lights were off. The wife was always meticulous, keeping the place spotless. After they entered, the police saw that in the kitchen, it looked like lunch was about to be made, but something interrupted the process. There were 2 plates on the kitchen island, and they were just left there. They noticed that the garage door was also open. The police officers then entered the couple's bedroom. Everything looked normal. Then they went into the bathroom. The police saw that the rug was crumpled next to the bathtub, so they walked closer. They noticed that one of the flower vases that was on the edge of the bathtub was knocked over, and pieces of glass were shattered all over the place. After that, they looked inside the tub, and they noticed some brown-looking smudge and some brown drops. The smudges were also on the wall. They took a closer look and realized it was most likely blood. This is what made them treat everything like a crime scene. The police were on high alert. You may think that they would realize that people sometimes break things and get cuts, but that would mean they went to the hospital. And upon checking every single hospital earlier, there were no signs of the Chadwicks. The police began combing the house for evidence, and then they questioned the neighbors, trying to find some information about the missing couple. Eventually, they placed both of them, Peter and QC, into the missing persons system. But the case wasn't over by a long shot. The police also noticed that the safe downstairs was open, and money and valuables seemed to be taken out of it. They also couldn't find QC's or her 2 sons' passports that would normally be in the safe. Things started to look more suspicious. Let's talk about the family a little bit. The children were very accomplished. A neighbor stated that the boys were known as being the best at everything they did. They had good grades, participated in school activities. Her mom was determined to give them the best opportunities possible by signing them up for different activities. But even though QC seemed to be very methodical, she also liked to party once in a while. One of the neighbors remembered how excited she would get for a Christmas party every year, about what she was going to wear and what to serve. She was described as someone who was warm, nice, and comfortable to be around. Peter, on the other hand, was very shy, didn't actually like socializing. People thought that he was hard to get to know, and he seemed to keep a distance from other people. From the outside, it seemed that the family was simply perfect, and that the couple were so in love and had it all together. The entire family traveled abroad a lot. They were wealthy, and both the parents had relatives that lived overseas. Peter was actually from Britain, and QC was from Malaysia. QC came from a large family, having 6 siblings. All of her siblings ended up with master's degrees, and she was the only one who just had a bachelor's degree. This made her feel a little bit insecure, and people think that's why she focused so hard on her children's education. She resonated with wanting them to do very well. Peter worked for his father's business that developed real estate, and he ended up managing an apartment complex that he owned. Not much was known about his family. Even though they had money, they weren't flashy. They drove a Toyota minivan and a 10-year-old Lexus SUV. The two have been married for 17 years, and it seemed that they were as in love as ever. Let's get back to the case. The police continued with their investigation that evening, and while looking around, they saw the minivan in the garage, but the Lexus SUV wasn't anywhere on the property. Because this was such a private gated community, there was surveillance footage. The police saw the car leaving the community at 1:32 p.m., and there was no footage of the car returning back to the neighborhood. They also found out that Peter's phone was actually turned off since 4:30 p.m. that same day. QC's phone was actually found inside the house connected to the charger. It was in the bathroom, next to the wedding ring in her wallet. They even had the helicopters flying around trying to locate the car, and they reported to the U.S. Border Patrol about the vehicle and the couple. But things took a weird turn. The San Diego PD get a 911 call the day after the two disappeared from their home. Keep in mind that San Diego is 100 miles away from the Chadwick residence. The call was traced to a gas station, 4 miles from the Mexican border. It was Peter who called, saying that his wife was dead and that someone took her.
911 emergency, this is Crystal.
Yeah, my wife's dead.
Okay, so where's that?
They took her.
Who took her?
The guy broke into my house. He drove me here. He had a friend. They just gone. They've gone in a pickup truck.
Okay, so your wife is dead.
She's dead.
Okay, did she die in
killed
the
her.
house and they took her corpse?
Yeah, they killed her yesterday.
They killed her yesterday.
Yeah, we've been driving in Newport Beach.
Okay. So hold on, let me get a scratch. He said that his wife's dead, but
My
someone
wife is
went into
dead.
the house and stole and he said her.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what? Who is he?
Juan.
Juan, how do you know Juan?
I picked him up to look at the paperwork at the house. I go into the house
And when did this happen?
yesterday, middle of the day.
Yesterday in the middle of the day. And when did she die?
Yesterday, middle of the day.
Okay, and where is she now?
They have the body. He's gonna cut her up.
Who has her body?
Juan and she.
Okay, so when she died at 11 o'clock, they took her?
Yeah. They made me put her in the car.
How do you know she's dead? What?
Body was hit. I've been driving. They said they're gonna cut her up.
What's her name?
Peter Chadwick.
Are you on any kind of medication, sir?
I'm heavy.
Okay.
Not bad.
Okay.
Because I think they're going, I'm going to Mexico or something.
Okay, but this happened yesterday at 11. You're now calling us at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay, what's Dr.
He told the operator that a man broke into his house, took him and his wife to San Diego in their pickup truck, and then kicked him out of the car. The operator then asked if his wife is still in the truck he mentioned, but he kept repeating that she's dead. The operator asked how she died, but the man started stuttering. He mentioned that they killed her a day before. Then he said that they've been driving ever since. During the entire conversation, the operator was very confused about what's going on. 2 police officers meet him at the gas station after this call, and he tells them his crazy story. He says that the day before at 11 p.m., Peter was working on one of his family properties. There was some remodeling going on, and suddenly a man named Juan approached Chadwick, asking if he had any work for him that he could potentially do. Peter said that he had a full crew and didn't need any help, but if he really is in need of a job, He informed him that he needed help on a small project at his house. At this point, Juan accepts, and he drives with the man back to his residence in Newport Beach and shows the worker a railing he needed to be fixed on the circular stairway inside the house. He leaves Juan to do the work while he went upstairs to his office. A little while later, he says that he hears his wife screaming. He went to check it out, following the noise into the bedroom and then into the bathroom. Peter then says that he saw Juan holding his wife down by her neck and choking her, and apparently the woman was also under the water in the tub. Now tell us, if a strange man was in your house doing some work, would you take a bath without locking the door? This seems weird to us. Is Peter telling the truth? Peter allegedly tries to stop him, but the man turned out to be too strong, and he threatened Chadwick with a pocket knife. Then, as Peter was telling the story, he skipped right to the part where the strange man murdered his wife, adding that the pocket knife's blade was pretty dull. Then, Peter Chadwick said that he was forced to wrap his wife's body in a blanket and put it in the back of his SUV. Juan also instructs him to get $10,000 in cash, along with jewelry and passports. Then the murderer gets in the Lexus SUV and tells his hostage to drive, all the while threatening him with the knife. Peter then continues to tell the officers that while he was driving, he continued to beg the man to let him bury his dead wife, but Juan continued to make him drive for hours without stopping. On the road, Juan gets on the phone with his friend, and because he was speaking Spanish, Peter doesn't understand a word of what he was saying. Eventually, Juan tells Peter to stop the car. Chadwick pulls over and the two wait for the murderer's friend to arrive. The name of the friend was Chi. Chi arrived in a green Chevrolet truck. They loaded the body in that truck, took the money and valuables, and left Peter there. But before they left, they instructed him to wait at the gas station until he receives a call from them on what to do next. That is, if he ever wanted to get his wife's body back. Peter waited just a few minutes and then entered the gas station, asking the attendant if he can use the phone to call 911. The police officers that arrived to meet him say that the man didn't even ask about the well-being of his sons. This seemed to be a red flag in their eyes. After Peter told them his story, they looked into his car, only to find a suitcase with men's clothes in it. And it seemed to be very messy, indicating the fact that when Peter packed it, he was in a hurry. Chadwick, after seeing that the officers found it, told them that the murderer asked him to pack a bag. Now, tell us, why would Juan ask his hostage to do so? Were they going on a vacation? After some further investigation, 5 hours later, they arrested Peter. They arrived at the station, and they take the typical mugshots of Chadwick. While doing so, they noticed that the man had several scratches on his body and on his neck. They found these wounds to be inconsistent with the story that he told. They didn't look like the wounds an attacker would inflict. In fact, they looked like defense wounds made by a victim. At the station, Chadwick mentioned that the scratches were made by Juan's pocket knife, but it was clear that the man was lying. Another lie was that Juan sat on his chest for 5 minutes, thus immobilizing him, and making it impossible for Peter to administer CPR to his wife after she'd been strangled. During the interrogation, the police officers found it odd that Chadwick took so many long pauses before answering, and the fact that he would frequently cover part of his face with his hands made them believe even more that he was lying about everything he was saying to them. At this point, no one ever saw Peter in the company of another person. Not at the gas station, not at the job site, not at his house. It would come across as weird because the man clearly stated he was in the company of someone named Juan, but Peter had something to say about that. He told the police officers that Juan was always in the back seat, and that's why he wasn't seen. Things weren't quite certain as to what happened, but the police had one very intriguing lead that they needed to follow. Peter did run into a police officer that very day when everything happened. This run-in took place as he was returning to his house, presumably with Juan to fix his stairs. Peter said that he pulled over to call his wife about lunch. Then a police officer came to his car to tell him he can't park in that spot on the highway. So, the detectives needed to track down this officer that saw Peter. Fortunately, after many calls, they managed to get in contact with the patrol officer that was on highway duty that day. They talked to him, and the man said that after looking around the car, he didn't see the driver with anyone else, meaning that Peter was all alone when he said he was driving home with Juan in the back seat. After a week of investigation, the officers still didn't know where QC was, even though they had a ton of information that would point to Peter being responsible for her disappearance. They started searching some suburbs of San Diego, but they didn't have any luck in finding her. A detective and some deputies meet up in an area where some large plots of underdeveloped land were. They all split up and started to look around. One deputy went in a different direction than the rest, and he reaches the property. It was a house surrounded by a big iron gate, and right next to the gate, a large dumpster was placed. He gets closer and starts noticing a really bad smell. The man was very uneasy, but he opens the lid and starts pulling away some of the debris in the trash before something caught his eye. It was a green blanket with something wrapped inside of it. After putting it aside, the man was shocked by the sight which unfolded in front of his eyes. QC's body was finally found, wrapped in a blanket, hidden in a dumpster basically in the middle of nowhere. But one of the officers remembered something. This wasn't the only body that was found in that dumpster. The strange thing was that a year before they had found another one there. Also, another fact, the owners of the house were cleared away from any connection with the first body found in their dumpster. That incident shook them terribly, and the family moved out of their house for some time. The strange coincidence is that they've just moved back into the house, just as QC's body was found in the same dumpster. But the coincidences don't stop here. Normally, the trash would come every Thursday and empty the dumpster. Peter may or may not have known that, but he hid the body on a Wednesday. So the next day, the company should have emptied the trash, and QC's body might never have been found. It seems like the family who lived there was in some sort of feud with the trash company, and that's why they never came to pick it up. So to sum up, the only reason the poor woman's body was found was because the family didn't pay their bills and were not on good terms with the garbage disposal company. A totally unrelated thing made it possible for the police officers to locate QC's corpse. After they found her, the investigators started taking a closer look at what type of relationship did the two have, and that's when things began to unfold. Police started looking through QC's stuff in her house, and they found a note. It said from Pete's computer, and below that it had a list describing Pete's search history. It seemed that Chadwick looked up some disturbing and strange things. He searched for the cost of abortion in California, Chinese massage girl escort girl's divorce, and one that stood out, how to torture. Obviously, this information is very concerning. Then the police found out from the couple's friends that the mention of divorce came up within the marriage. And this was because QC said that her husband didn't give her attention at all. There were rumors that he was cheating on his wife. Their friends were asked why QC didn't leave her husband after finding what he had searched for on his computer. But she was apparently too concerned about her children's life and well-being to stop and think about her own happiness. So, while being in custody, the judge sets a $1 million bail. Of course, Chadwick, being very wealthy, pays it off and is released. The trial goes on for 2 years. The man makes his appearance on hearings, is cooperative. He visits his children, who at that time lived with some relatives, and it seemed that nothing stuck to him. He eventually got the Lexus SUV back from the police, after they searched every last bit of it. Peter goes to Santa Barbara and stays with his father for a while, and the only thing he does outside the house is to drive to Orange County for his court hearings. But something suddenly happens on January 16, 2015. Peter doesn't show up to court, and this specific court hearing was to decide on what the jury will base their decision on during the trial. After seeing that the man was absent, the police stated that if he missed the second court hearing, they'll issue a $250,000 warrant for his arrest. His family and lawyer had no idea where he was, so they decided to worry, thinking that he took his own life. The police started to try and find out where Peter was, and upon looking at his bank accounts to see any traces of where he might have spent his money, they noticed that they've all been drained. At that point, Peter took out all of his assets, leaving even his children with no money, not even their trust funds. The investigators took another look inside Chadwick's home, and they found some interesting books. They were on the subject of changing your identity and living off the grid, and that pretty much solidified their idea about what the man was planning to do. They actually found out that before he disappeared, he started to take test trips to try and push the limits of his court order without getting into trouble. At that time, he was not allowed to leave the state of California, but obviously it didn't stop him. Supposedly, he traveled to Seattle, Missouri, and Pennsylvania, and he was never caught. This proved that he was not monitored well at all. The police found out from a cab company that someone took a taxi from Peter's dad's house all the way to an airport in Santa Barbara. The odd thing was that the taxi driver said the person was a woman, which led everyone to believe that it wasn't Peter. But after that, they got a hold of security footage from the airport, and Peter was spotted there. This made them believe that the man dressed up as a woman so that he wouldn't be recognized until he got to his destination. In the footage, he's seen waiting in the airport for hours without doing anything else. Then after he was done just sitting around, he gets up and leaves the airport, never to be seen again. At that moment, Peter was gone, but the police still went on with the investigation. After about 5 years, police get a very important lead. They found him in Mexico. In August of 2019, he was transported back to the United States. The police accredit this to having a close relationship with the Mexican authorities. You may wonder what Peter was doing during this time. Well, Chadwick, having millions of dollars, was living the good life in Mexico. He was staying in 5-star hotels and blowing all his money away on having a good time. But a law was suddenly given in the country. Mexican authorities required all the people who stayed in high-end hotels and weren't from Mexico to have a passport in order to check in. Peter, of course, couldn't do that because there was a warrant on his head, so he decided to stay in lesser accommodations, hostels, motels, and so on. He even began picking up odd jobs, maybe because he didn't want to lose all his money and needed some sort of income coming in. It seemed that Peter started even using different names like Paul Cook and John Franklin. Upon being returned to the States and placed under arrest, Chadwick is still going through trials. If found guilty of murdering his wife, he could face between 25 years and life in prison. Now tell us, what do you think? Did the man really kill her? And was really a Juan character involved? Leave your comments down below. We'd be very interested in your take on the entire case. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment down below your take on it, and subscribe to the channel. Also, hit that notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. And until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.